Hi everyone, today I will be making a cool custom kit bashed tank out of these thrift store toys I got. I won't be using these night vision goggles here in the middle because as I was doing some research on them I found that they're actually worth a little bit of money online and they work surprisingly well for being a 15-year-old toy that I got for $3. Here's a quick video of them working in almost a pitch black room and I gotta say I'm pretty impressed. The first thing I do is sort of just take everything apart so that I can put it back together in a different form. I'm going to have a list of all the tools and materials I used down in the description below with some helpful links to find out where you can get them yourself. These are Amazon affiliate links, which basically just means that if you buy the item through the link in my description, I get a small commission and you don't pay anything extra on top of that. This is something that's very new to me and I'm trying it out, but this could really help out the channel and keep these videos coming in the future. The Nerf gun actually took a bit of time to take apart. There's a lot of little hidden screws in these new ones, but eventually I got it apart and got the pieces I wanted. So this is sort of the base of the entire shape of the tank, and I'm using the treads as tank treads. And these back wheels, I'm gonna rough up with this wire brush, and I do this like over the entire tank, just to make sure that glue sticks and paint sticks and it doesn't chip off later. I glue on these little pieces of EVA foam on the tire just to make them a little more bulky, a little more industrial looking. This yellow thing is the base of the excavator, and it fits in the treads, and so I'm using that as a connection point, and I just had to take away some of the Nerf gun in order to make it fit, and I'll glue this in later. I'm adding more pieces of Nerf gun to the side of this just to add a little more bulk and make it look less like a Nerf gun. Again, I'm using this wire brush and scuffing everything up so the paint sticks. These are just paper templates, and I'm going to use these to then mark onto styrene and cut those out to fill up any of the gaps where the two pieces of plastic didn't quite meet. I wanted to turn this space into an air intake like they have on some jets. And so I make a paper template first, and then I cut those out of styrene, glue those up into a block, and then I will glue those onto that open space. Using some styrene, I glue down sort of a cover for the air intake. I'm not really sure what those are called, but it just covers the air intake and adds a little more dimension to it. And styrene is a thermoplastic, so I use a heat gun and very carefully heat it up enough till it bends, and then I can form it into the shape and hold it until it cools down. This little jet engine is off of that blue car from the beginning I took apart, and I kind of like how it looks. It looks like a jet engine on the back of a tank, which I know in real life would never happen, but hey, this is a fantasy war tank, so everything flies. And I'm just putting some 2-part epoxy in the back just to add some stability because there wasn't a whole lot of contact for the plastic to adhere to. And here's what it looks like all glued up. And I'm gonna do the same thing to the other side to mirror it. This is the main barrel from the Nerf gun I took apart, and I think it'll make a really good tank barrel. I think it has good size proportion to the tank part. But I do have to cut it down to size for it to fit, and then I will rough it up to make sure all the paint and glue and such sticks to it. At this point, I can use the original screws and screw the 2 halves together again, because I'm going to be working on them together from now on. I'm having trouble gluing it in place because there's not a whole lot of contact, so I put some more 2-part epoxy down and then squeeze it in so that it sort of builds its own little base to be glued onto. I like this part here. It also came from the Nerf gun, and I'm going to use it as a turret base, I guess. I'm just going to take some parts off. This is EVA foam. Again, I'm just using it to add some layers. I'm using more styrene plastic to connect the bridge between the 2 rockets to make it one giant rocket. I also have these empty spaces down below. You're not really going to see them, but they bothered me, so I'm going to take these wire covers and glue them in and just sort of jam them in there to fill up space. I want to put like a vent in the back here, but this red part sticks out just a little too much from the original Nerf gun, and so I do have to grind it down in order to give myself a flat space to work on. Now this is really thin styrene plastic, and I'm using a paper cutter here and just cutting them into strips, and then I'm gluing those strips onto the vent to sort of make it look like a vent. After a little bit of a haircut, I can glue the vent onto the back and, put it all together. Off camera, I added some of these shields around them. I guess they're heat shields. Is that what it is? I don't know, I'm no rocket tank expert, but I think they're heat shields. At this point, I also glue the connector piece for the excavator treads down and just add this piece of EVA foam just to cover up the rest of the gaps underneath. This little thing is from the excavator toy arm. And I'm going to turn it into a double harpoon gun thing, because that's cool. I recently was watching Avatar The Way of Water, and they have a whole scene where they're shooting harpoons at whales, which is a sad scene, but looked kind of cool. And that's what inspired this little device here. It also sort of helped build the story behind this model and what these guys are doing out here on this giant jet tank thing. Using some 2-part epoxy, I fill up the screw holes, and then with the extra, I'm pushing it into this little mold here, and I'm going to make little hubcaps for the back wheels. This is just garden wire. It's used for holding up plants and things like that. And it makes really good industrial wiring for scale models like this. I'm gluing the chain to the side here and adding a little cover to it. In my mind, there's a chain locker in there like they have in boats for anchors. I went on down to my local tabletop gaming store and got this Dwarf Barbarian Mini, and I'm going to use this guy on the top here. I did modify him a little bit. I did take his axe away from him because, you know, it's dangerous to drive and operate heavy machinery with an axe in your hand, but he fits perfectly inside the gunner seat, and so that's where he's going to go. Now this is the first Mini I've ever painted, and I watched a few tutorials and then I just said let's wing it. So I added it to this block, and I'm going to do a black base coat and then a gray and white dry brushing. And I'm using these contrast paints from Citadel, one for the flesh and one for the armor. And these actually worked really, really well. I had a good time doing it. I think I need to choose more contrasty contrast paints, because in the end, his skin and his armor sort of blended together, and I had to do some dry brushing of red to make the armor pop a little more. But for my very first Mini I've ever painted, I think I did pretty good, and I'd like to do more in the future. And if you have any tips or tricks about miniature painting like this, leave them down in the comment section. I'd love to read them. Like I said, I'm super new to this, but it's really fun and I'd like to do more. It's crazy how coating everything the same color really brings everything together finally. This is just a black primer. I did miss a few spots. You can see some orange peeking through, but that'll all get covered up by paint, so it doesn't really matter. I start off by just using a silver dry brush and adding a bit of metallic silver. This makes everything look like grungy metal to begin with, which is a great jumping off point for the paint. A little late in, I realized that I had forgotten to do any physical weathering, and so I took my files and I cut in some scrapes and cuts and dings and things like that. And I'll paint these in with a bit of black paint to cover them up, and they'll blend right into the rest of the weathering. I'm just using cheap craft paint here from the local craft store. And this painting method I like to call slap on the paint and trust the process. This is really one of those trust the process kind of paint jobs where at first it really doesn't look good, but the more you do it and the more weathering you put on and drying time, it comes together, I promise. You gotta trust the process. I don't want this entire thing to just be one color, and so I'm adding a bit of red to make things pop, like the tip of the harpoons, as well as the wiring, which you'll see pretty soon. As I was building this model, the story that sort of came to my mind was that these dwarves are basilisk hunters. If you didn't know, a basilisk is a giant snake creature, a mythical creature. And in this world, these dwarves, they need these giant tanks and machinery pieces in order to hunt down these giant snakes. And when they do, they capture them, and they're able to use them for meat and bone and oil and poison. And they use all these resources as much as they can to barter and trade with the other inhabitants of the population of the world that they live in. I'm adding some weathering here. This is just a mix of kind of these grimy black, brown, red, acrylic paint mixed with water, and I just cover the entire tank in this, and then I'm going to go in with a paper towel and dab some of it off, and it leaves a grime over all of the surfaces, and especially in the shadows and areas that are hard to reach. I also go in with a paintbrush and some more concentrated grime wash, and I just get in more of those crevices and cracks that this grime would naturally accumulate in. I also really love adding these strip marks. I think it adds a lot of realism and brings everything into scale. One of the final things I do is glue on our little mini, and he is set, he's not going anywhere. And then I'm going to take a dry brush with a bit of silver and just hit the edges on everything, bring out those highlights, bring out that raw metal again, and after a coat of clear coat, a little bit of time to dry, we're ready for the glamour shots. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed, let me know. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, put them down in the comment section. I'll try to get back to you guys. I also really enjoy reading your suggestions, so keep those up. Thank you again for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you in the next video.